Hello, my name is Lauren, and I'm 28 years old. If you had met me in my uniform, pressed, decorated, and marked with the weight of missions I can never fully talk about, you might have assumed that I'm someone who has always been respected, valued, and seen. People look at medals and think they tell the whole story. But the truth is, the hardest battles I ever fought were not on foreign soil. They were inside my own home, with the people who should have known me better than anyone. I serve in the United States Army as a senior operational strategist, someone trusted to design missions where one wrong detail can cost dozens of lives. For years, I led teams across continents, from frozen forward operating bases to the dust-heavy outskirts of conflict zones. I've been the voice in the headset when everything is falling apart and the person others look toward when they need a plan that can get them home alive. 2 years ago, I was assigned to a multi-nation NATO task force. It was one of those missions that changes a career, maybe even your identity. Long nights, high-risk extractions, hostage protocols, border intel, and split-second decisions that left no room for ego or fear. I coordinated real-time movements across 4 countries, and when the dust settled, we had completed the mission without a single soldier lost. The report called it exceptional strategic execution. For me, it was just doing my job. But my family didn't even know. Not because I was silent, though I have learned silence very well, but because they simply never asked. Growing up, everything revolved around my younger sister, Madison. She was the golden one, the cheer captain, the homecoming princess, the one my parents bragged about to every neighbor. I can still hear my mother's voice telling people, "Madison just has that spark, she's meant for big things." My father would nod proudly, as if all her achievements were proof that the universe naturally favored her. I didn't mind it when we were kids, but as I grew older, it started to sting in places no one could see. Every attempt I made to share something I achieved, an academic award, a promotion, even my decision to join the military, was brushed aside like a small, forgettable detail. I remember the day I told my parents I'd been accepted into officer training. It was one of the biggest days of my life. I'd worked for it. I'd earned it. I walked into the living room expecting at least a surprised smile. My father didn't even look away from the TV. My mother asked if I could come back later because Madison had won another dance competition and they were in the middle of celebrating. That was the night I realized some people don't ignore you because they're busy. They ignore you because in their eyes, you don't matter enough. But even then, I tried. I tried on birthdays, holidays, family dinners, tried to tell them where I'd been, what I'd learned, how I'd changed. I tried to show them the person I was becoming. And every time, the same thing happened. The moment Madison walked into the room, all conversation shifted to her. Her hair, her dress, her job, her plans, her latest achievement. I learned to swallow the words before they even reached my lips. So with time, I shifted my focus to the military, the one place where I didn't have to fight to be heard, where performance mattered more than personality, where decisions were respected, where silence wasn't a sign of invisibility, but of discipline. When I completed the NATO mission and received a commendation, I called my mother. She told me she couldn't talk. Madison was picking out wedding colors and needed her full attention. That day, I stopped calling. And maybe that's why this story begins the way it does. Because despite everything I've done, despite every rank I've earned and every life I've helped save, the one battlefield I never conquered was the one called family. I wish I could say it didn't affect me anymore. I wish I could say I was stronger than that. But the truth is, there is a specific kind of loneliness that forms when you achieve everything you dreamed of, and the people you hoped would be proud never even look your way. This is my story. Not of war, not of medals, not of missions, but of how one wedding invitation, one insult, and one moment of unexpected recognition shattered years of silence and changed everything. The wedding invitation arrived on a Thursday afternoon, slipped beneath my apartment door like an unwanted memory. I had just returned from a 3-day briefing rotation, exhausted, still carrying the weight of maps, coordinates, and contingency plans inside my head. I remember bending down to pick up the envelope, noticing the gold border, the the heavy cardstock, the elegant Denver-style calligraphy, the kind that pretends to be classy even when the message isn't. At first glance, it looked beautiful. But the moment my eyes reached the center of the envelope, something inside me tightened. It didn't say Lauren Carter. It said, Miss Lauren Carter, the proud one. Lauren, not Lauren. Not even close. And the proud one? What was that even supposed to mean? I stood there in the hallway for a moment, staring at it, feeling that familiar ache building in my chest. The hallway was quiet, but silence has a way of becoming louder when it carries a sting. I walked inside, dropped my bag on the chair, and held the envelope up against the light, like maybe it would magically correct itself. But no amount of sunlight can clean the intention behind cruelty. I opened it carefully. The card inside was even fancier than the envelope. White marble texture, gold foil border, embossed floral corners. A wedding announcement straight out of a high-end Denver event planner's catalog. And yet, my name inside was spelled wrong again. We are delighted to invite Miss Lauren Carter. My full name, printed twice. Both wrong. Both deliberate. I swallowed hard. My sister Madison had always known how to hit exactly where it hurt. Not loudly, not directly, no. Her specialty was subtle erasure. Pretend the other person doesn't exist. Make them feel like a background character in a life they worked for. I sat down on the edge of my sofa, staring at the card, trying to understand the message behind it. Was this supposed to be an invitation or a reminder? A reminder of where I stood? A reminder that I could lead NATO teams, but couldn't earn a properly spelled name from my own family? The thought made my throat tighten. I didn't realize I'd been staring at the card for 10 minutes until my phone buzzed. It was Megan, my best friend, and the only person on this planet who refuses to let me drown in silence. I picked up. "Hey, Meg." "You good?" she asked immediately. Megan always had that radar, the kind that senses emotional storms before they fully form. "I got Madison's wedding invite," I said.
Oh.
Just that one word. But somehow it held sympathy, frustration, and a sigh all wrapped into one. "It says Lauren. And the proud one." There was a pause that lasted barely 2 seconds, but Megan's silence was louder than any reaction. Then, "That's not a mistake," she said flatly. "Lauren, that's not a typo. That's a message." I closed my eyes. "I know. She didn't forget you," Megan continued, her voice sharpening. "She's trying to shrink you, erase you, make you feel small. She's been doing it for years." I let out a long breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "It's her wedding. Maybe she didn't think it mattered." "No," Megan interrupted softly. "This is exactly when it matters." Her words hit harder because they were true. In every big moment of her life, Madison made sure I stood in the shadows, even when I wasn't trying to stand in the spotlight. "Are you going?" Megan asked quietly. "I don't know," I whispered. I wanted to be strong. I wanted to shrug it off. But something about this invitation felt different. Not just hurtful, intentional, sharp. A reminder that in my family's eyes, I would always be second, always overlooked, always invisible enough for my own name to be misspelled. Megan exhaled slowly. "Lauren, they're not forgetting you. They're erasing you." Her sentence lodged itself deep inside me. It felt like someone had spoken the truth I'd been avoiding for years. For a long moment, I just sat there, holding the invitation in my hands like it was something radioactive. Finally, I looked at the gold-foiled letters again, and they didn't feel fancy anymore. They felt cruel. "I'll go," I said quietly, surprising even myself. "Are you sure?" Megan asked.
Yeah.
My voice steadied. I need to see for myself just how invisible they think I am. I set the invitation down and leaned back. This wasn't just a wedding. It was the beginning of something I didn't yet understand. The night before the wedding, I stood in my bedroom, just me, the quiet hum of the lamp, and the one thing in the world that had never betrayed me, my uniform. It hung on the back of my closet door, pressed perfectly, the fabric still carrying faint traces of the desert dust only I would ever recognize. My medals were arranged neatly on the table beside it, catching the soft light in tiny glimmers that almost looked like reflections of the lives behind them, the rescues, the missions, the moments where time felt like it stopped but somehow I didn't. I walked toward the uniform slowly, almost reluctantly, like approaching an old friend you haven't seen in too long and aren't sure you deserve anymore. My fingers brushed across the fabric. It felt strong, reliable, exactly the way I needed to feel right now. And exactly the way I didn't. The American flag patch on my shoulder, the NATO badge, the insignia of my rank, they all stared back at me with a quiet pride I had never felt at home. Out there, in the field, in strategy rooms, in briefing tents lit by harsh fluorescent lights, I was someone who mattered. Someone people trusted. Someone people stood when I entered the room for, not because of my name, but because of my work. But tomorrow, at my sister Madison's wedding, none of that would matter. Not the missions. Not the commendations. Not the sacrifices. Not the lives saved. Not the responsibility I carried at an age where most people were still figuring out who they were. Tomorrow, I would be the girl they handed trays to. The girl they introduced as the one who files things. The background character at a celebration I had never been fully invited into. I exhaled, staring at the uniform long enough for memories to slip in, the kind I don't always allow myself to revisit. The night we completed the NATO extraction mission. The commander shaking my hand. The soldiers thanking me. The briefing officer saying, "Your plan saved us." The moment my team looked at me not as a young strategist but as a leader. I remembered the adrenaline, the pressure, the weight of responsibility. I remembered the quiet relief afterward, knowing every person had made it home. And then I remembered calling my mother that night. I remembered how her voice sounded distracted. I remembered her saying, "Madison just got engaged, Lauren, you're calling at a busy time." She never asked about the mission. She never asked if I was okay. She never even asked where I was calling from. I blinked, and the uniform came back into focus. Wearing it to the wedding would change everything. It would wipe away the lies. It would expose the truth. It would force them to see me. But something inside me resisted. Not out of fear. Not even out of hurt. But because wearing that uniform into a place that had never respected me felt wrong, like dragging honor into a room that had only ever held me in contempt. I didn't want my rank to be a weapon. I didn't want my uniform to be something I used to fight my family. The uniform meant more to me than that. It represented service, sacrifice, leadership, brotherhood, and life-or-death responsibility. It represented every soldier who ever trusted me. It represented the nights I stayed awake planning missions so someone else could make it home to their family, even while mine barely remembered I existed. I stepped back. No. They didn't deserve to see me in this. They didn't deserve to see the part of me that had been forged through discipline, pain, courage, and loyalty. They didn't deserve to wear my identity like an accessory at their picture-perfect Denver wedding. I chose a simple dress. Neutral, quiet, nothing that would draw attention. If tomorrow they wanted to treat me like I was invisible, then fine. I would walk in as invisibly as they had always made me feel. But deep inside, a part of me wondered, was this decision strength or surrender? I didn't know yet. All I knew was that tomorrow would hurt, and I needed to be ready. The next afternoon, Denver's sky looked like something out of a postcard. Soft blue, streaks of pale gold sunlight reflecting off glass buildings, the Rocky Mountains rising quietly in the distance. If this had been any other day, I might have taken a moment to appreciate it. But today, I was walking into my sister's wedding, and every step felt heavier than my deployment boots. The venue sat on the edge of a quiet Denver neighborhood. White stone pillars, polished steps, strings of soft lights hanging from the entrance. It looked beautiful, almost grand. The kind of place where people take pictures to prove their lives are perfect. I adjusted the strap of my simple dress, took a breath, and stepped inside. Music drifted through the air, violins, soft chatter, the clinking of glasses. The hall was full already. People laughing, hugging, taking photos near the floral arch. I walked in quietly, hoping to find a seat before anyone noticed me. But of course someone did. My mother, Karen, spotted me from across the hall. For a split second, her expression froze. Surprise? Irritation? Disappointment? I couldn't tell. She approached me quickly, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. "Oh, Lauren," she said, brushing her eyes over me like she was scanning for imperfections. "You're here. Good." She didn't hug me. She didn't compliment my dress. She didn't even say she was glad to see me. Instead, she pointed toward a group of waitstaff adjusting plates on a nearby table. "Can you help them for a moment? They're running behind. Just move those trays toward the back. Quickly, please." She didn't ask. She instructed. Like I was temporary staff. Like I wasn't her daughter. I stared at her, stunned. "Mom, I'm a guest." "Yes, of course," she said impatiently, waving her hand as if swatting a fly. "But you're good with organization. It'll only take a minute." Good with organization. That was her new label for me? Not strategist. Not commander. Not someone who had run multinational missions. Just someone good with organization. I swallowed the anger rising in my throat. Before I could respond, a couple walked over, some of my parents' friends from their social circle. The woman smiled politely. "Oh, is this the daughter who works in, what did you say, Karen? Government files?" Karen nodded casually. Yes. She handles paperwork, numbers, that sort of thing. She's very quiet." Quiet. Paperwork. Numbers. I almost laughed. The man leaned in. "That's useful. A stable job. Must be simple, right?" Simple. The word hit harder than I expected. I could feel my pulse tightening in my neck. He had no idea what it meant to guide a team through hostile terrain. No idea what it took to carry responsibility for lives. No idea how many nights I stayed awake planning routes so human beings wouldn't die. And yet to them, I was a girl who handled files. I forced a small smile, the polite kind you give when you know the truth won't matter anyway. My mother didn't correct them. Didn't explain. Didn't even hesitate. She just looked relieved that someone finally put me in a box she approved of. Before I could step away, my father Richard appeared beside her, holding a drink and grinning like the center of the universe. "Oh, Lauren," he said loudly. "Are you helping out? Good. You've always been good at numbers, haven't you?" Then he laughed, amused at his own words. I felt something inside me twist, a painful, slow, familiar twist. He still had no idea who I was, who I had become, what I had sacrificed. To him, I was still the quiet daughter who counted things. "Dad," I said softly, "I'm not." But he cut me off. "No need to explain. Just make sure everything's in order." He clapped my shoulder like I was some intern. I looked around the hall at people sipping champagne, smiling for photos, adjusting their outfits. Everyone's so wrapped in their own little bubbles that no one noticed the woman standing there trying not to break. The humiliation was quiet but sharp. And the silence felt like glass pressing against my chest. I stepped back, trying to steady my breathing. Inside my head, a voice whispered the same words I had grown up hearing in different forms. "Stay in the background, Lauren. Don't take space. Don't expect anything." But then another voice, stronger this time, rose beneath it. "They don't know you. They never tried to. And they don't get to define you." Still, I said nothing. I absorbed the humiliation like I had done my entire life. Quietly, privately, painfully. I had no idea that in just a few minutes, this entire hall would fall silent for a completely different reason. I was standing near the corner of the hall, pretending to check my phone so no one would hand me another tray or ask me to help out, when I felt someone's eyes on me. It wasn't the curious, dismissive kind of stare I had felt all afternoon. This one was sharp, focused, alert. The kind of look soldiers give when they're assessing someone. I lifted my head. Across the room, near the floral arch where Madison was taking pictures with her bridesmaids, stood Daniel, her fiancé. He was talking to a group of guests, laughing lightly, the perfect groom in his perfectly tailored suit. But when his eyes met mine, everything in his expression changed. His smile faded instantly. His back straightened. His posture shifted from casual groom to something disciplined, formal, and unmistakably military. For a moment he just stared. Not with confusion. Not with annoyance. But with recognition. Real recognition. He excused himself from the group without breaking eye contact. His steps became measured, controlled, almost ceremonial as he walked toward me. I froze. Everyone in the hall turned their heads, curious. Why was the groom walking with that intensity? What had caught his attention? He stopped 3 feet away from me. His eyes scanned me again, this time with the clarity of someone connecting 2 worlds. Then, in a voice loud enough to cut through the music and chatter, he said, "General Lauren Carter, ma'am." The word general echoed like a shockwave. Conversation died instantly. Glasses stopped midair. Music faded into the background like someone turned down the volume on the entire universe. My heart slammed against my ribs. He knew me. He knew exactly who I was. Daniel's voice carried across the hall with the kind of respect no family member had ever given me. Then it happened. He stepped back and gave me a full military salute. Perfect posture. Perfect hand. Perfect precision. A salute reserved for authority. Respect. Honor. Gasps rippled through the guests. A woman actually dropped the fork she was holding. Someone whispered, "General," loud enough for 5 tables to hear. I felt every pair of eyes in the room lock on me. But Daniel wasn't done. The doors to the hallway opened and 2 men in uniform, army officers, part of the wedding security, walked in. They saw Daniel saluting, then looked at me. For a second, their expressions shifted from confusion to shock. And then recognition. Both men straightened instantly. And, without hesitation, without asking a single question, they saluted too. 3 salutes. 3 soldiers. All for me. The very woman who had been carrying plates 20 minutes earlier. The woman dismissed as quiet and good with numbers. The woman introduced as a government file worker. Silence flooded the hall. Deep, cold, breath-stealing silence. The kind that only comes right before a truth hits hard enough to break something. I saw Madison's face first. Her jaw dropped. Her bouquet slipped slightly in her hand. My mother, Karen, had gone pale, like every drop of blood had drained from her face. Her eyes flicked rapidly between Daniel and me. Confused, stunned, terrified. Richard, my father, looked like he had been punched in the stomach. His confident grin collapsed in on itself. His drink trembled in his hand. He blinked once, twice, struggling to understand what he was seeing. "General," he whispered. 1 word. Barely audible, but loud enough for me to feel years of neglect compressed into it. Daniel dropped his salute only after I gave the smallest nod. Protocol. Respect. Recognition. He stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said, still formal. "It's an honor to finally meet you. Your NATO operation reports were part of our training last year." My breath caught. He knew my work. He had studied it. Before I could react, a group of guests whispered loudly, "She's a general? How did we not know?" They said she filed papers. What? She's younger than most generals. That explains the security's reaction. Oh my God. All of it swirled around me, but I kept my posture still, calm, controlled. The way military discipline had trained me. Madison stumbled toward us, her voice cracking. "Daniel, what are you doing?" He looked at her, calm, respectful, but unshakable. "Showing respect," he said. "To your sister." Sister. Not helper. Not background. Not the girl with the trays. Sister. Karen stepped forward, her voice shaking. "Lauren, why didn't you tell us?" I met her eyes. Cold, steady. "You never ask." Richard opened his mouth, but the words died in his throat. And in that moment, standing in the center of Denver's prettiest wedding hall, surrounded by silence, shock, and truth, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time in my entire life, they finally saw me. Not the version they invented. Not the shadow of Madison. Not the quiet daughter. Me. General Lauren Carter. And all I said, calmly, clearly, without anger, was, "You never asked who I am." The hall stayed frozen. No one spoke. No one moved. And I, for the first time, felt free. For a long moment after I spoke, After those 5 simple words left my mouth, no one in the hall moved. It felt like the air itself had solidified, trapping everyone in the truth they had spent years avoiding. The music had stopped. Conversations had died. Even the lights seemed too bright, as if exposing everything my family had tried to hide. I stood there, not as someone demanding respect, not as someone claiming a spotlight, but as someone who finally understood her own worth. A worth that never depended on their acknowledgement. Daniel stepped back respectfully. The 2 officers returned to their posts, and the guests, still stunned, whispered in low, disbelieving voices. Madison clutched her bouquet so tightly the petals bent. Karen looked like she might faint. Richard looked older than I had ever seen him. But I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel angry. What I felt was tired. Deep, bone-heavy tired. Tired of proving anything. Tired of fighting battles no one else saw. Tired of chasing a place in a family that never had space for me. I inhaled slowly and let the silence settle. Then, without a word, I turned around and began walking toward the exit. My heels made soft clicks against the polished floor. No one tried to stop me. No hand reached out. No voice called my name. Not even a whisper from Richard or Karen or Madison. And strangely, that told me everything. All my life, I had stayed in the background because they expected me to. All my life, I had remained quiet because that was the role they gave me. All my life, I had been invisible because they chose to close their eyes. But not anymore. I walked through the hall with a calmness that surprised even me. Not with my head down, but with my shoulders steady, my steps firm, my spine aligned with the same discipline that had carried me through war zones. Each step felt like shedding a layer of pain. Each breath felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. When I reached the large double doors, I pushed them open quietly. A gust of cool Denver evening air brushed against my face, gentle, crisp, almost cleansing. And there she was, Megan, standing by her car in the parking lot, arms folded, worry etched across her face. The moment she saw me, her shoulders eased, and she rushed forward. "Lauren," she whispered, gripping my arms gently. "Are you okay?" I didn't answer right away. I just let the question sink in. For the first time, I wasn't sure what okay even meant. But I knew what I wasn't anymore. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't erased. And I wasn't the forgotten daughter standing quietly in the corner. I let out a shaky breath as Megan pulled me into a tight hug, one of those rare hugs that actually hold you together when you feel like falling apart. Her voice softened. "I'm so proud of you." Those 5 words, those simple, human, genuine 5 words, hit me harder than any salute, any medal, any recognition I had ever received. I closed my eyes and let myself feel it. For once, someone saw me, not the uniform, not the rank, not the strategist, not the shadow behind Madison. Just me. When she pulled back, she brushed a tear off my cheek with her thumb. "Let's go home," she said. I nodded. As we walked toward the car, I glanced back at the glowing venue doors. The sound of muffled whispers leaked through them, but none of it mattered anymore. I didn't leave the wedding because I was defeated. I left because I was done being measured by people who refused to understand me. Tonight wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. A quiet beginning, yes, but beginnings don't need noise to be powerful. Sometimes, a dignified exit is the loudest statement you can ever make. 2 days after the wedding, I was sitting at my small kitchen table, staring at a cup of coffee I hadn't taken more than 1 sip of. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. Megan had gone to work, and for the first time since the wedding, I was alone with my thoughts. That's when I heard it. A soft envelope slip under my door. For a moment, my heart tightened. Part of me already knew who it was from. I stood up slowly, walked to the door, and picked up the envelope. My breath caught when I saw the handwriting. Richard Carter. My father. Not Dad. Not Love Dad. Just his name. Formal. Uneasy. Guilty. I took the envelope back to the kitchen, sat down, and stared at it for what felt like a full minute before finally opening it. Inside was a letter, 3 pages, handwritten, the ink slightly uneven like his hands were shaking. I unfolded the first page with careful fingers. Lauren, I don't know how to start this, except by admitting that I have failed you. The words blurred for a second as a flood of emotions hit me: anger, sadness, disbelief, and a strange, reluctant softness I didn't want to acknowledge. I took a steadying breath and kept reading. Richard wrote about moments I didn't even know he remembered. My first day in the Army. The night I left for officer training school. The time I came home with a bruised ankle from training and said I was fine. The day Madison won a school award and everyone celebrated, but I had received a scholarship and no one noticed. I thought you didn't need attention, he wrote. You were quiet, independent, strong. I never realized that silence can also be a kind of hurt. My chest tightened. He went on. I saw you standing in that hall, and I didn't recognize the woman you've become. Not because you've changed, but because I wasn't paying attention. That's my fault, not yours. I swallowed hard. There were more words, apologies, regrets, explanations that didn't fix anything but tried to make sense of it. He wrote about Madison, about Karen, about how he had allowed one daughter to shine so brightly that the other was left in the shadows. And then came the line that made my breath stop. I see you now. I closed my eyes. My fingers trembled, just slightly, as I finished the rest of the letter. He said he hoped someday I would talk to him, not forgive him, not forget anything, just talk. When I reached the end, I sat there in silence for a long time, the pages lying loosely in my lap. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to fold the letter and keep it. Part of me wanted to throw it away. But mostly, I realized something important. This letter wasn't about him. It was about me. About letting go of a weight I had carried for far too long. Slowly, deliberately, I stood up, walked to the small metal trash bin beside the counter, and tore the letter into pieces, page by page, line by line, until only one small strip of paper remained. The strip that read, I see you now. I folded it carefully and slipped it into my wallet, not as forgiveness, but as closure. A reminder that some battles resolve not with noise, but with acceptance. I walked to the balcony, letting the cold Denver air brush against my face. Below me, the city moved on, cars, people, lights, sounds, everything alive and shifting. And for the first time in years, I felt free. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I wasn't the shadow behind Madison. I wasn't the girl who stayed silent. I was Lauren Carter, general, strategist, leader, survivor. My phone buzzed beside me. A new mission briefing. A new operation. A new chapter. I smiled softly. The world was waiting. And this time, I wasn't walking into it unseen. I was walking into it as myself. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps the channel grow and reach more people who love powerful stories like this one. And don't forget to subscribe for more new stories every day. Stay connected, stay inspired, and I'll see you in the next story.